Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Sharon Ehrlich. She is an executive coach, former corporate leader, and she now empowers high performing women to lead with confidence and impact. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you so much, AJ, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Sharon. Sharon, welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about how one can break barriers, live confidently in their whatever roles that they are playing, especially about women leaders. We'll talk all about this, but let's first talk about your journey, your background, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to share a little bit about myself. So, as you might detect from my accent, I am American. I am a native New Yorker, and I've been living in Europe for nearly 25 years now. So, I live in Vienna, Austria. One of the things I always like to share with people is the fact that careers are not linear. And my story is a real testament to this fact. And so I started a career after completing my MBA in hospital administration. And when I discovered that I was going to be moving to Europe, I had to completely reinvent myself. So all of my dreams about running a hospital sort of went up in smoke because I was moving to a country where I didn't speak the language. And I ended up working in IT. And IT is a wonderful place to work because the skills that you bring to the table are applicable in so many areas. And I had a very long career at IBM and then went on to work for some other Fortune 500 companies like Citrix, and eventually moved my career in the area of development of people, which is where my real passion lies. And eventually I took the step to move out of corporate and start my own business, which is called Living While Leading. And it, as you mentioned in the intro, it is a coaching practice, but I also do leadership development training and motivational speaking as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Sharon. So I want to understand from you now, this is 2025, February 6th. Uh, is it different in terms of, in terms of leadership role, in terms of doing what one is doing, especially for women leaders? Is it different than it was, say, 6 months before or a year before? Are there new challenges coming our way? How do you see this?
Well, I mean, the challenge that is front and center for so many people is AI. AI is real. People who want to put their heads in the sand and not recognize that AI is going to impact their both personal lives and professional lives need to wake up. And so things have changed. If you think about, in the winter of 2022 was the time that all of us got access to a learning language model called ChatGPT. And that was just the beginning. And the floodgates have just opened. And what has changed is that if people want to stay relevant, and this is not just women, this is men and women, if they want to stay relevant, they need to understand how AI can make them more effective, can make them more efficient, can help deliver more value in whatever job roles they have. And many companies are not teaching people how to do this. And so you have to be very self-motivated, experiment, explore, use YouTube as your teacher and trainer to really understand how these different sorts of applications can be applied in your professional life.
Absolutely. So you talked about AI, Sharon, and a lot of till now the discussion for women leadership was about women empowerment as well as a lot of male domination in those areas. So will has AI taken over that whole debate now? It will be AI and the male domination also, breaking that whole ceiling has been relegated to the background. How do you see it, especially for women leaders?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is, data speaks for itself. If you look at the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, it's by and large dominated by men. If you look at the upper tiers of executive leadership, even in information technology, which is where I have a lot of my experience, it's heavily dominated by men, but women have made an impact. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But, you know, there is this huge elephant in the room called AI that can't be ignored. And so, you know, I don't, it's not my intention to make people frightened about AI. You know, we're still at the early stages, but it's moving at breakneck speed. And so it's just another consideration that women who aspire to become leaders need to factor into their strategic planning when building and navigating their careers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, in this changed time with AI, with so much of things that we have left in the past and so much to come in the future, how should women, especially, look at success? How should they define success, or say redefine success if needed be? What is it that you tell leaders of today?
Well, you know, leadership at the end of the game is not about the leader, it's about the team that is being led. And so, one of the things I always try to impress upon my clients who come to me who have somehow hit the wall in their career, or want to move into a different direction is, how are you using your team? Are you developing your team? Is your team growing? Because when your team grows, when your team is successful, you're successful as the leader. And you can never lose sight of that. And the other part of that equation is leading with your humanity, right? You have to be a leader who cares about their employees and their team. I don't suggest that people become best friends and lovey-dovey. Boundaries need to be respected. But on the other hand, you have to treat people with dignity and respect, and understand circumstances, and understand that everybody brings different talents to the table that can be leveraged within the team. And having cohesiveness within the team is also important. If you have a whole bunch of malignant players in the team where everyone is a lone wolf, this doesn't get you further. And so leadership is not just about chasing the metrics. Of course, that's a big part of it because that's how you get measured. But you don't chase the metrics alone. You have to do that with those folks who are part of your business unit, your department, or whatever area of responsibility you have.
Right, right, Sharon. So, for women leaders, especially, when we talk about uh, leading with humanity, leading with heart, servant leadership, and all, at the same time, a lot of people were portraying women leaders, that you got to be strong, much more strong in a male dominated industry. And now, in these changed times, the whole narrative is about men, especially, to be much more of a heart centered leadership, much more softer, much more empathetic. Women, how should they look at themselves then as leaders? Should they then go towards becoming much more softer than they have been? Because then how do they become strong leaders? How do they balance it? Is it a easy journey for them to look at? Is it an opportunity for them in today's time, or is it much more difficult to lead in today's time, especially for women leaders?
Well, I think what's really important here, AJ, is authenticity. You know, if I enter an organization and I see that this is an organization that has, is hyper masculine, I am never going to be a hyper masculine person. That is not my authentic way of operating. And so for me to enter that sort of environment and sort of adopt that persona to lead, at some point is going to break. It's not sustainable. And so what I say is, you have to find a leadership style that is in harmony with who you are authentically, right? That doesn't mean that you have to be loud. It doesn't mean that you have to be aggressive. I can show my power by setting boundaries, making sure people respect boundaries, teaching people how to treat me. Those are all of the things that make for a strong leader, not the loudest person in the room and not the bully. But you have to know who you are in order to be able to do that effectively.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what is your greatest strength in the coming times? Is it your skill? Is it knowing about AI? Or is it about authenticity? I want to understand because, a lot of leaders failed because of this whole debate about the great resignation, the quiet quitting, and now leading to revenge quitting and all. I want to understand again for women leaders, is it a great time to be in, or is it a difficult time to be in? Because they have a lot of opportunity, but at the same time, there's a lot of expectations also. Do they have that luxury to fail?
Well, failure is an inevitable part of being a leader. I mean, you cannot avoid it. Every time you fail, hopefully you fail forward. You learn something from your failures. You pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and then you go on. The same thing goes with your team. When your team fails at whatever they're doing, the point is not to chastise them or to berate them for failing. It's to have a forensic understanding of why the failure happened. So not only that person learns from it, so that everyone else learns from it. In response to that question, these are difficult times. Many companies are laying off people. They're reducing the size of their teams. At the same time, there's also a lot of opportunity. If you just look at LinkedIn, for example, and look at the job boards there are plenty of positions that are being advertised. What I would say is there is opportunity, but the opportunity is not going to fall in your lap, right? Having a network, being connected, showing up and being visible is the only way that these opportunities are going to be known to you so that you can pursue them. And so I think this is really important. Is it a difficult time? I think it's a difficult time for everyone, not just women. Is there opportunity? Yes. When you have the opportunity, you have to focus on impact. Impact is everything. What kind of an impact are you driving in the role that you have assumed?
Right. So you have 30 years of leadership experience, global companies, as you said, IBM, Citrix, and several others. So I want to understand what were the challenges you faced them? Those challenges, do they still exist, or are they vanished with the times?
Oh, those challenges still exist, unfortunately. Many of them still exist. I last year I had a LinkedIn live show where I was inviting women executives and thought leaders to my show to solve a problem that I had when I first came into my professional career. And that was that I did not have access to a lot of or any executive women and thought leaders. Well, guess what? That's still a problem today, which is why I created that show. That has not gone away. One of the other challenges that I had was being, the only one in the room. So either I was the only woman or I was the only Afro-Latina woman, and that can be very isolating. And isolation is real. As women, climb the corporate ranks and become one of a few, it can get lonely at the top. That hasn't changed at all either, because we already mentioned earlier in the conversation that there's still a lot of male domination in many industries.
Absolutely. Male domination in many industries. How do you tackle that? Is there a solution to this thing?
Well, here's the thing. The organizations are built as they're built, and one person isn't going to change the organization. But what you have to understand is how to leverage what exists, right? You have to learn how to leverage what exists. And so I mentioned earlier showing up. One thing, and I hate to generalize, but it's true. One thing that men do very well at is showing up. When there are the drinks after work, when there is the golf tournament, when there are any of these activities where they might even have the possibility to come in contact with a decision maker or a leader or someone who they normally would not meet, they're there. And a lot of women say, well, I don't want to go out. I don't want to drink. I don't like that. Or, there are lots of reasons. And sometimes there are really valid reasons because you have children at home and it's not easy. But the fact of the matter is, you have to show up. People need to know that you exist. You have to use your words to talk about your accomplishments. Putting your head down and grinding is not enough. If you think you're going to just work hard and people will recognize your work, that's not going to happen. That's not the reality. You have to work hard. You have to talk about what you do. But more importantly, you have to have other people talk about what you do. And that's why I always tell women that I coach that being mentored is great, but having a sponsor is better. Because a sponsor is that person who's talking about you when you're not in the room, saying, yes, that is a person that delivers results. Yes, that's the person that we want to lead this next initiative. Yes, that's the person that we want to promote. Without sponsorship, you have limited opportunities to amplify your performance and amplify your impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Sharon. So, lot of these women that you quote, what is it that they generally come to you for? Do they come to you that they want to leave an impact, or is it more about, to reach in better positions?
Well, it's a variety of things. One of the topics that comes up very often is just a lack of self-confidence and trust in the skills that they have. Many of these women are educated. They have multiple degrees. They have a tremendous amount of experience. But at the same time, they always second guess whether or not they're ready for the next move. And they need someone like me to help them figure out whether they're ready and to strategize how to make those moves. Women, I can talk about the United States, for example. Women have more advanced degrees than men do by a multiple of X. I don't know what that multiple is, because they always think, well, I just will get one more degree and then I'll be ready for it. And I love being educated. I also have a master's degree and I also have a certificate from Cornell University, but that's not the only thing you need to do, right? And so that's one challenge they have. The other challenge sometimes is about visibility and what strategies they can do to make themselves more known within an organization. There are other instances where women are working in environments that are just not the right place for them, but they're so tethered to it that they have a difficult time strategizing how to move, how to go someplace else, because there's a lot of loyalty there. So this is a topic that also comes up. And there are 25 other different topics as well. But those are some of the ones that float to the top.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sharon, one thing I want to understand, what is your experience? Women, when in corporate, they talk about, male domination and finding it difficult to put across their own voice in several. But in a lot of now startups are being, headed by or started by women entrepreneurs. What is your experience? Do they hire or get more women into their system, into top positions, or do they not? What is your experience? Is it happening more, or what is your experience? Should it happen more? If not, it is not happening.
I mean, the startup space is a wonderful space for women to be in. It's, there's a lot of insecurity and there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's also an incredible amount of opportunity. What I have discovered in the last 18 months or so is that, at least in the city that I live in, there are more startups started by women than I've ever seen in the past. And I think that that's a sign of the times that, women are starting to understand that they have a lot of talent, they have great ideas, and maybe it's a better move for them to pool their energy and their resources and their talent with a partner or a group of partners and start their own venture. And I've seen this happen with women who are incredibly young, women who aren't even 30 years old. So there is a lot of space and opportunity, but it's not for the faint of heart. there is a lot of work involved in being in a startup. And if you can think about how a startup is structured, it's a very lean organization. So you have to wear an enormous amount of hats, which is a wonderful learning opportunity, because you learn about, P&L and marketing and how to be ready to talk to the media and everything. And you wouldn't get all of those opportunities if you worked at a large corporate concern. At the same time, because there are not so many resources, you don't get paid that well in the beginning because you're hoping that the payout will come later. The enterprise may fail, so that there's always that risk when you're starting a new business. But I think startup is a wonderful space to be for those who have the stomach and the guts for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what is your advice, especially for women, especially with regards to living while leading framework? What is it that they can learn from that, so that they can have a good life living while leading, especially in terms of self doubts, imposter syndrome, lack of confidence? What would you like to tell them in a nutshell, as per
Yeah.
the living while leading framework?
Thanks for that question. What I think is important and what I focus when I'm working with women is being strategic, not letting life simply happen to you. But, life is random enough, right? There are enough random things that are going to happen to us that we have absolutely no control about. But we have much more control than we think about other aspects of our lives. And that's what I talk about when I am coaching my clients or when I'm delivering my workshops, is how can you get more strategic about those aspects of your life that you can control. And there are many of them. And when we start to really get into a conversation and understand, initially, I hear people say, I have no control. And then as we start talking about it, then they start to become very illuminated and understand, well, actually, I can navigate that. Actually, I can have an impact here. I can influence it. Maybe not completely control situations, but influence them. So what I like to talk about is being strategic. Get strategic not only about your career, also get strategic about the things that are consuming your time. So many of us spend time on activities that no longer serve us and who we are today and what we want for ourselves tomorrow. Get rid of those things. Get rid of those people in your life who are not helping you on your journey to your greatness. Some of us are, unfortunately, surrounded by people who don't believe in us. But, there are many more people who do believe in us. And those are the ones that we need to bring in our lives as well. So, it's a very holistic approach. It's not only about one singular thing, but looking at your whole life and understanding what are the incremental things. I'm not talking about breaking the whole thing apart and starting from zero, but incremental steps that one can make to really move things forward in a direction that is in harmony with what they want for themselves in their future.
Absolutely. There is much to learn about all these things from you, Sharon, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more about you, about your coaching, be your client. What's the best way for them to do so?
Well, there are two ways you can reach me. First off, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on that platform, and I also have a newsletter which you can subscribe to. I have a podcast, which is called the Living While Leading podcast, which releases episodes every 2 weeks. And if anybody is interested in working with me, they can visit my website, which is called livingwhileleading.com. And there's a work with Sharon page, and you can just fill that out. And then we can talk with one another and see, if there's any chance for us to work together and me help you make a bigger impact in your life.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.